Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Welcome this morning. Hope you're having a great day and that this morning finds you well. The haze burns off on this almost summer day. We are a day away from summer. It's an exciting day that the seasons may turn for us as they continue to change. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hello, hello. Hope everybody's doing well on this day. Looking out over the bridge, and it is hazy out there. Good morning, Jane. Hope you're doing great. All is well in your world. Good morning, Donna. Hello, hello. Hey, Karen. I know it is a toasty day. I think it's the first of the real hot ones, as far as I can tell. It's really quite something here. We are just off of last night having our deacons dinner, the gathering together with our folks to offer up kind of some joy and some fellowship with among our deacons, both currently serving and those of the past. So it's always a great night of just not just fellowship, but really a celebration of the church and the celebration of all the good work that deacons have done over the years. All right, friends, let's get going this morning. It is the 19th day of January. Oh, January, listen to me. It is the 19th day of June here at 11:11, and I'm glad you're with us and a part of this journey. It is Juneteenth, this newly formed holiday over these past few years, about the celebration of the end of slavery in America. It was originally the end of slavery in Texas, and it became a symbol of the end of slavery in the United States. And so comes up that has been raised up as a holiday to celebrate this freedom in the world and the way in which that freedom brings us that God's freedom for us is breaking out in the world. We're going to talk more about that in the days ahead. But what I want to bring up to you today is that there's this way in which, if you look at the movement of anti-slavery movement throughout the world, throughout the all of the universe, throughout all of time, one of the great contentions, and we can fight about this in historical circles, but here's the reality, is that slavery ends because Christ came. And we can, now that's a big theological and even historical claim. But here's the thing. Prior to Christ's advent in the world, prior to, and then throughout that, and given all of the other traditions in the world and all of the other spiritual traditions in the world and all the other ways, it has only been Christianity. Christianity has been the only voice throughout history that has actually called for the abolition of slavery. Now, I get it took a long time. It took, the operation of God works in God's time, not our time, but it has come to humans. It has come to the John Newtons of the world, who were slavers, who operated a slaving ship for 16 years, who and implied the trade, and then in his conversion and in his coming to Christ would then later write the great words called amazing grace and become one of the great anti-slavery advocates in England, and would mentor those who would go on to actually end slavery itself, both in England and America. That this call, that human beings should not have the ability, the right to impress other human beings for their labor and for their efforts, comes from this foundational notion that Christ came into the world and that we came to follow in the path of Christ, and that we are to be as Christ is, which means we are to be sovereign before God, we are to be, and that every individual in the world, every individual in the world has within them this call, this high sovereignty before the created God. And that is what Christ comes into the world. That is the freedom that Jesus comes to bring. You don't find it in Islam. There's places in Islam that you can go to slave markets right now within Islam. You don't find it in Hinduism. You don't find it in any other tradition. And that's, and we can, this is not about saying, beating our chest and saying, oh, we're better than you are. It is to say, it is to name actually one of the highly unique things about the Christian tradition, about bringing the idea that God has sent out himself for us, and that we are not to be in servants and servants to, but that we are to be to one another, and to indentured servants or in slavery to one another, but that we are all to be raised as children of God. In the middle of what's called the little apocalypse in Matthew 24, there is this line: he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. That this, and I love this image, because I think in some ways it's not just about what Jesus came and did 2,000 years ago, but it actually, I tend to believe that this is actually what the world looks like a whole lot more right now. That God has sent his angels out looking for us. That God has sent his angels out looking to gather us in, to gather, and this term elect, or his chosen, that that's getting a lot of play right now. You look at the theological conversations that are going on in the media. There's a whole lot of people who are talking about who's the chosen people, who isn't the chosen people, all this sort of thing. But here's the thing: is to gather his elect from where? The four winds, meaning the cardinal directions, from one end of heaven to the other. What ground is this text actually claiming? It's claiming all of humanity. God hasn't, John Calvin did a lot of good, maybe he did some, but one of my great criticisms of John Calvin, and again, not a Calvinist, but was his ability to say those guys and not those guys. Like, those people are elect, those people are recipients of God's grace, and those people are not. There's a great, the theologian J. Huther, says it this way. He says, the elect is always used for those who have already become believers, and never those who have not yet received the call. That it's convenient that way, isn't it? And so, when I hear this from Matthew, I hear that God came not to elect you and me and that guy, but her over there. She doesn't look so good. God came to choose us all and to gather us all in, and that God's angels are at work in that process right now, from one end of heaven to the other end, from all of creation. That God's angels are at work in that. And that when we see things like this incredible historical day of slavery being overcome and the celebration of that, and we see that as quite honestly as one of the unique things that we find, not in our pagan ancestors, in the Greeks and the Romans, not in Islam, not in Hinduism, not in Buddhism, but in Christ. We see that uniqueness shine itself through. And this is not to criticize the others. This is to simply to make the distinction, to say that there's something particular going on here. it is that God has sent out his angels at a loud trumpet call. And I like to think of Juneteenth as being a little bit of a trumpet blast against that moment, to gather us all in, all from the four winds, that we might come to be his own, and that we might come into relationship with the one who made us. The great John Paton was a missionary. He was early on in the missionary. In the early 19th century, he was at the edge of the missionary movement. And he would go to the New Hebrides Islands, which is notorious for cannibals. Even to today, there's some pretty scary folks in the New Hebrides. And he would go, and he found himself amidst this tribe, he and his family. They all came out of the jungle and surrounded the mission station there in the New Hebrides Islands, and they were intent on burning down Patton's mission and killing them all. This was not out of the realm of what they did. This was what they called Tuesday. This was just a regular part. Patton and his wife gathered his family together, and they prayed throughout the darkness of a terror-filled night that God would deliver them. And when the dawn came, they were amazed that all the attackers had left. They would continue to work in that mission station. They would teach people to read. They would heal the sick that would come to them. They would simply do the work of caring in that. And a year later, the chief of that tribe would come to know Christ and would come to Christ. But Patton was so perplexed by this what had happened a year earlier. He kept wondering, why didn't they just kill us that night? And so finally, having the chief having come to Christ, he took him aside. He said, asked the chief. He said, why didn't you burn down our house? Why didn't you just burn down the house and kill us a year ago? And the chief replied in surprise. He was like, well, didn't you see all those men with you? And who were they? Who were those men with you? He said Patton didn't have any men with him. He knew there's nobody else present but him and his wife and his family. But the chief said he was afraid to attack the mission that night because he saw hundreds of large men in shining garments with swords drawn protecting the mission station. Friends, the spiritual reality of our world looks a lot more like that mission station than it does the kind of the nattering nabobs of negativism that we would find on our screens, that would convince us of despair, that would convince us of those people are chosen, those people aren't, that convince us of the brokenness and the horror and the difficulty of the world. I'm not saying those things don't exist. What I am saying is there are forces arrayed against them that are so great, that are so beyond what we can even conceive of. There are legions of angels, not legions of demons. There are companies that come to protect and surround and work for us. Maybe in our modern framework, in our modern mind, we can't see them anymore, or we somehow have poo-pooed and brushed it off as something else. But what Matthew declares in Jesus' teaching in his little apocalypse is that he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And friends, from one end of heaven to the other, the angels come for you. The angels come to shine and protect your little mission station where you stand. They come to surround you with the goodness and the light that shines in the darkness, and they come to bring you home. So friends, on this Juneteenth, I see this celebration of the end of slavery as just an outward, a clumsy and imperfect outward appearance of the wild and real inward reality of the angels and the Spirit and the power of Christ that works for us all. Peace and grace to you all, my friends. And we are away. I'm away. I head out tomorrow to our national meeting. I'll be bringing some 1111s from there, and so we will see you next week from St. Louis. So peace and grace to you all, and we'll pick it up next week with another 1111.